70-day truce in the enclave. But we move on now, and trade talks between the European Union and the United States appear to have new momentum. A high-level call between US President Donald Trump and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has taken place. According to an EU spokesperson, the call was initiated by von der Leyen and has given fresh impetus to stalled trade negotiations. While officials refused to disclose specifics of the Sunday call, the EU confirmed its zero-for-zero proposal, a plan to remove industrial tariffs on both sides, is still on the table. Further talks are expected on Monday afternoon when EU Commissioner Markus Šefčovič speaks with US Trade Representative Howard Lutnick. Meanwhile, in Southeast Asia, French President Emmanuel Macron is in Vietnam on a landmark visit amid growing global trade tensions. There, the French president has commented on the ongoing tariff talks. Let's listen in.
J'ai eu l'occasion de m'entretenir avec le président Trump, en effet. Je crois qu'il faut voir là la traduction d'une impatience à conclure. Il y a eu aussi des échanges avec la présidente von der Leyen ces dernières heures, qui a poursuivi une discussion très en profondeur. Et moi, je suis confiant. Quel est notre objectif ? D'avoir un cadre d'investissement et d'échange pacifié avec les États-Unis d'Amérique. Et de le faire, évidemment, de part et d'autre en défendant nos intérêts, mais en permettant qu'il y ait la concurrence la plus loyale possible. C'est ce en quoi nous croyons, une concurrence loyale et équitable. Et donc les discussions avancent bien. Il y a eu un bon échange, je crois, entre le président Trump et la présidente von der Leyen. Et je souhaite qu'on puisse poursuivre sur ce chemin.
Joining us to discuss these latest developments is Martin Sá-Arraias, an international affairs expert who is joining us from Quito in Ecuador. Martin, thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with us. This really is a turnaround following an announcement from Trump on a potential 50% tariff on the EU. It now seems that it's flipped 180 degrees and there is optimism over a deal. What do you think the catalyst has been for this sudden shift in rhetoric?
Well, I think Europe is concerned about these new tariffs. The US threatened tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, and the US and the European Union are managing a complex trade relationship, balancing cooperation with raising protectionism. I think right now South Asia is becoming an increasingly important economic and geopolitical battleground between West and China, and I think France is trying to look for another option. And basically, Vietnam right now is becoming a huge export country that can replace China.
Yes, Martin, absolutely. Looking at these discussions that have taken place, is this just another example of Donald Trump's hardline stance and flippant use of potential tariffs as working once again? We saw it with the border nations of Canada and Mexico. We've seen him, of course, use the Liberation Day tariff threats to get many countries to the negotiations table. Is this Trump being the businessman that his administration say he is with great effect?
So actually, this is becoming a huge issue for the whole world in trade terms. I think Trump was sure that the whole world will be absolutely dependent on the US tariffs and that he would have no problem in doing that. However, right now we see alternatives such as Vietnam. We need to remember that Vietnam is part of the free trade agreement with the European Union, EFTA, making it a natural partner. We see that Vietnam is strategically positioned in South China Sea and this region in a geopolitical tension. And I think the European Union has recently launched an anti-subsidy investigation into Chinese trades, suggesting upcoming tariffs. So I think the European Union is not interested right now either in China or in the US. They are interested right now in opening the trade with the Southeast Asia new powers in terms of trade.
Yes, Martin. Looking at the relationship specifically here between the US and Europe, why is a positive relationship so important? And we've heard a talk for a potential zero tariff measure to be put in place. What's the significance of this?
So I think right now Macron is balancing this by engaging in the southeast of Asia, showing that Europe has its own strategic outreach. And talking about the US, there is this ongoing friction between the US and the European Union in trade policies. And I think this is going to open a new world order in terms of trade, where the US is going to be a little bit segregated from the dependence on being the most on the global power of trade. And I think this is going to open like new opportunities for emerging countries.
Yes, and those potential opportunities, of course, come in the wake of potential breaking of relationships between traditional partners. Who do you think will profit the most from that?
I think actually these new emerging countries will profit the most, and also the European Union is going to profit more because it's not for their interest to pay these new tariffs. And we know that actually a lot of these absolutely luxury brands that were supposed to be American, they were actually manufacturing in Asia. So I think right now people are more concerned about the tariffs instead of the quality of these exports, because we see that actually Asia is doing pretty well in creating this type of clothes and you know the trade. So I think it's a positive outcome.
Yes, absolutely, Martin. To bring an end to this discussion, where do you think these US and EU talks go next? Do you think a deal is imminent, and how is that likely to affect the markets?
So I think it's going to affect not the whole global market, but I think it's going to affect the US especially, because the US is going to become more isolated, like not in a short term, but in a long term, because Europeans are starting to look for other options, and they will start to grow their trade in other directions. So I think the whole global economy is not going to be affected. Either the United States is going to be isolated, and they need to change their approach because it's not going to work in a long-term strategy.
Martin Sá Arraias, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing your insight. We will, of course, be across all of the developments in the global trade tensions, specifically focusing today, of course, on those US-EU discussions that have taken place. We move on now, and India's global diplomatic drive against terrorism has gained